Good evening. I'm Margaret. I'm reporting from Washington, D.C., and I'm live now here on just off of Capitol Hill, and I wanted to bring you the most up-to-date information that I could find. Of course, Trump gave that epic speech, and we saw CNN people like, what is his name? Van Jones, I believe that's it. The white lash guy. He actually complimented the president last night, saying that, oh, finally, the president showed up. No, Van Jones, he's been around the whole time. You're just now getting a clue as to what the rest of us have known the whole time. Now, before I get into tonight's discussion with you and going over some points of his speech, I want to point out some Democrats in that audience should be very ashamed of themselves. And of course, I'm talking about Keith Ellison and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, among others. And they were sitting while the president was acknowledging the Navy SEAL's wife, William Ryan Owens. Mrs. Owens, thunderous applause to her. Those two buffoons were actually seated. And we're talking about a woman whose husband died with such incredible honor, defending her country, securing intel that's very valuable to us, according to Mattis, General Mattis. And yet these two idiots don't even know when it's appropriate to stand and sit. That's what we're dealing with. I want to take you to Keith Ellison for a minute because I was doing some research about Mr. Ellison today. And of course, we know that he's the deputy DNC head, and former Secretary of Labor Tom Perez is currently the appointed chair. Now, Trump tweeted out about Mr. Perez earlier this week, got a serious kick out of it. We're all basically thrilled that it's Tom Perez because we know exactly who he is. Now, he's a Soros prop-up. For those of you who don't know, he was affiliated with a very radical group, La Raza. He's very open border, push, community organizer type. And we know from leaked documents through the Open Society Foundation, those documents that were leaked, that he was actually one of the keynote speakers propped up by Soros for Open Society Foundation. So that's exactly who we're dealing with here. Very corrupt, very globalist, doesn't love our country, wants it destroyed, wants us to have open borders. Oh, and he's then chaired, the co-chair, of course, is Keith Ellison. And I was looking over some of the names that he uses to write under. They're very telling of who this person is. And I'm not going to go into the specifics of Keith Ellison tonight. I want to keep this brief. But he talks about something in his writings called revisionism, and he's trying to distance himself from that. Of course, he's a black Muslim coming from the Nation of Islam in 2007. He distanced himself from Farrakhan, and now I'm not really sure what his affiliation is, other than he seems to have very hostile rhetoric when talking about our country. So that's who was in the audience last night. Now, it didn't stop the overwhelming response that Trump has received regarding this speech, and it was an epic speech. And one of my favorite lines from this speech, and I just want to give it to you guys, we are one people with one destiny. And he says, the time for small thinking is over. The time for trivial fights is behind us. What we need now is courage to share the dreams that fill our hearts. He's absolutely right. And unfortunately, I wish that the trivial fights were behind us. We have people like Nancy Pelosi who issued a statement. I was reading her statement in regards to Trump earlier today, and it's a frickin' joke, people. It's like, was she even listening to the speech? Was she inside the room? Of course we know she was in the room with all the eye rolling. But her statement referenced the Russians yet again and their security breach and how Trump isn't for working America and he wants to keep everybody sick and poor. No, that would be your party. That's what you all try to do. He's trying to do the opposite and pull us out of 8 years of very destructive policies that have collapsed middle America, and that's why he's in office, lady. Not the Russians. Other than your ridiculous rhetoric, him calling you incompetent this week was right on the money, frankly. And people like Nancy Pelosi on Capitol Hill, it's really a wonder how she hasn't done more damage than she has, except for the fact that she's incompetent. Now, other than Nancy Pelosi, and I'm not bashing just the Democrats because I know there are evil forces on both sides, frankly. There really are. Case in point, Dennis Hastert, former Speaker of the House, was a convicted child. Well, he wasn't convicted for child rape, excuse me. He violated banking laws, but well-known, a pedophile in the Republican Party. This is not about Republican or Democrat. This is about calling it like I see it. And unfortunately right now, for the Democrats, you got a lot of wicked people in your party, so we need to call them out. With that aside, and moving forward this week, I'm going to be on the Hill. We've recently taken on a new camera guy, and he has a lot of Hill background. So we're going to be bringing you interviews with specific members. That's our goal. And we're going to try to reach them just as they're getting out of session tomorrow. So if you have any questions for the members on the Hill, be sure and tweet them out to me at Margaret J. Howell, and I will hit them up with your questions. And that is no easy task, let me tell you. It's not intimidating to talk to these members, but they avoid the press like the plague, especially the press that tells the truth. Taking you back to Nancy Pelosi for a minute, because I don't want to miss this point. He claims, and this is what she said regarding Trump's speech last night, he claims he's making America safer, but he's jeopardized the security of our country and weakened our fight against terror. No, he has done the direct opposite. Lady, you are so full of baloney, so full of garbage. It's difficult not to have a gag reflex, even reading your press releases. President Trump has made us more secure and more safe. We know that the rogue idiots, Hillary Clinton's camp, for example, and we know what they believed and what they felt. We know this largely because of WikiLeaks and those leaked emails, and I pored over those emails for several weeks to be able to report what was in them. And we had the buffoons at CNN saying that it was illegal to even view them and read them because of the way that they were released. No, they want to keep you stupid and in the dark. But thank goodness for channels like Right Side Broadcasting Network. We're here to tell you the truth. We're here to bring you the most up-to-date information. And let me tell you, folks, my heart really goes out to our counterparts. I want to take you to a conversation. I don't mean to jump around, but there's so much going on. And I want to make sure that I highlight and cover all of it. So back to Pelosi's ridiculous press release. You know, there are no words, frankly. The woman is full of garbage. He's not making us, you know, more susceptible to terror. He's actually stemming that. Now, I had the opportunity to meet George Lombardi at CPAC. And for those of you who don't know George, he was actually affiliated with Veterans for Trump. He's close to the Trump camp, and he was responsible for inviting Marine Le Pen into Trump Tower, that famous photograph. I don't know if you've seen it. It's on the web if you just Google Marine Le Pen and Trump Tower. And what the liberals, and they're not really liberals, they're not classical liberals, they're far radical leftist, as far on the socialist spectrum as you can get. They're all crazy as you know what, as far as I'm concerned. And she's a woman, I believe she's a flawed person. She's just a person who loves her country, who doesn't want to see it destroyed because of their open border policy, and assuming, you know, more refugees than they could possibly assimilate, and it's destroying and eroding their culture. Not only is it doing that, but it's inviting radical Islam and terrorists onto their soil. And she is the only, in my opinion, she's one of the few hopes for France and French people for maintaining their civilization, and just questioning why their open border policy is the way that it is. You know, it's people like Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton. They would have done the same thing to our country. They want a borderless society. Anybody who is welcome to come should be allowed to come, regardless of where they're from, if they're vetted, what their affiliation is, if they have radical views, if they hate us, if they like us, no matter. And not only do they want that, but they also want the American taxpayer to foot the bill for all of it. And she doesn't realize they're so out of touch. And it mirrors what the DNC did with Tom Perez, because how out of touch could they get? This Soros propped up guy who represents the old way that they think, that scares the you-know-what out of everyday Americans. They think that that's somehow going to be effective. Good luck, boys. The next 8 years is going to be really rough for you. And I couldn't be happier. I agree with our president, and I think that he had a very excellent point, and that we congratulate Mr. Perez as heading up the DNC, because that's kind of good news for all of us, because we know exactly who he is. We know his radical viewpoints, and he's really easy to identify and point out all of this radical ideology. A side note about Perez, just in research and reporting, he was a person who actually sued Sheriff Arpaio, Joe Arpaio, regarding his immigration stance. Talking about immigration for a second and switching gears, because this is a really critical point. Trump campaigned on building that wall. Everybody knows that. And On the table right now, the discussion of tariffs or taxing for entry is a possible way of funding this wall. I was reading an article prior to coming on the air with you tonight about the possible ways that we could get this wall built and who's going to pay for it. The good news is we do have somebody in charge at the helm running the ship here, and the crybabies on the Hill, same old dead rhetoric, and they propped up leadership with the same old dead rhetoric. Now, taking you back for a minute to that beautiful Navy SEAL's wife, his widow, I should say, and the standing ovation that she received. I was looking at the tweets coming out and just the response to her, and making sure that I tweeted her this morning. She was on my mind the second that I woke up. And it's people like this that we need to rally around and support. One of Hillary Clinton's campaign staffers, I believe his name is Dan Grillo, he actually tweeted this, and I went to look for it tonight so that I could talk about it with you and bring it to you. It's been deleted, and it's been reported that he's been fired. He called Mrs. Owens an idiot on Twitter, and he said that she was being used by Trump. And it was so offensive to me. I actually went out looking for Dan Grillo today to get him on the record and on the air, giving him a chance to clarify, to no avail. He's not listed. But something that really bothered me, the way that these people think, they are so anti-American, they're so anti-everything that we stand for, and our values and ideology. And I'm so glad to report that I believe he has been fired. That was the latest on Fox News. But nonetheless, we always want to give people a platform to speak and clarify if they misspoke. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case with him, only because he's too cowardly to actually face the fact that people have questions for him regarding a war hero's widow and calling her an idiot. Namely, people like me. You know, buddy, looking for you. Hope to find you soon, and maybe you'll clarify your position, because I really don't want to believe that everybody that represents your party is that out of touch, that idiotic yourself, and that mean-spirited, frankly. Really disheartening, and a long 8 years for you guys. Prior to coming on the air tonight, Diamond and Silk are my guilty pleasure. I try to watch them as much as I can because I love those ladies, and they really got something right tonight. And I don't have a lot of time to go into this tonight for you, but there is a major immigration debate that's on the table. And we're going to be bringing you stories about this week, specifically what's going on in the Hill and who is fighting Trump's wanting to secure our border, namely, and wanting dangerous criminals who are illegally here out of the country. I'm going to be bringing you those updates. I'm going to try to bring you some names because I want to make sure that we can identify those in Congress that don't uphold our laws, that don't care about American families, and really owe the American people an explanation for why they're so destructive, frankly. I'm going to keep this really brief tonight, and I'm going to go back and watch. I didn't get a chance to watch Pence's full. He was swearing in, obviously, the Secretary of Interior. Want to watch that and bring you some highlights on Twitter. And of course, don't miss my report tomorrow. We're going to be on the Hill at 10 o'clock, waiting for members to come out of session. Tweet me your questions. I can't wait to get them. I'm going to sign off here. Margaret Hell reporting for Right Side Broadcasting Network.